Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, welcome, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to today's Toddcast. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Friends, I got yesterday, I've shared with you before, we have, my wife's brother lives in Minnesota. He lives relatively close, within, an hour, something like that, from Minneapolis. And I had sent him something I'd seen on the Babylon Bee the other day, kind of making a mockery of the things happening in Minnesota. And by the way, I want you to know this about me. Friends, I'm a big believer in just laughing at circumstances. I can be deadly serious about the circumstances while also finding a way to laugh at the situation. I didn't always have that skill. I think that's come over the course. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I don't have it. My wife will tell you sometimes I just have lost the ability to even find humor in the situation. But in most cases, I can find humor in it, not because it's any less serious or anything like that, just because I found that actually helps me manage it. I think of some of the most difficult times that I've been through, sense of humor, to me has been one of the things to carry me through the circumstances. And listen, I know you don't want to feel like people are making fun of your plight. But when you do it to yourself, you're not making fun of it. You're managing it, and you're finding something to at least, I guess, mildly entertain you. So I sent him this video. Of course, you know what I think about Minneapolis and Minnesota, what's happening there. I care about this country. I care about what reasonable, law-abiding citizens are having to deal with there. And I sent this video to him. It was basically a video that said, I forget exactly what it was, but something about if you can't make the trip to Somalia, just consider a vacation to Minnesota, to Minneapolis in particular. And it was just a parody, right? Just making fun of the circumstances. And the way that we got here is so crazy. Like, they have to be laughed at, while at the same time realizing that the stakes are high and that this is serious. So I sent it to him, and he responded with a message that said something to the. Here, I'm going to pull it up here. Hold on here. Yeah, funny, but what to do about it? ... 3 dots. The ellipses, and it got me to thinking. This could be what we talk about here today, because this is This is a real circumstance and situation. And this applies, I would say that what we're going to talk about here today is what should the people, the reasonable people in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, be doing today, practically? What can they do? And not just people in Minnesota, but what should the rest of us, how should we be thinking about this? What can we do? Because this stuff, my friends, is coming to a blue state, or a blue city at least, near you in no time flat. In fact, here I live in a relatively conservative part, well, I should say conservative part of the country. But I'm not far from Indianapolis, which is run by a bunch of knuckleheads and morons who have no regard for law and order either. I'm not far from Bloomington, Indiana. You know that from me talking about the Hoosiers last week. But Bloomington, Indiana, run by insane leftist lunatics, signing on to every virtue signaling bill that they possibly can. to show that they're in solidarity with the lunatics in places like Portland or San Francisco or wherever else. So, I mean, it's close to all of us, unless you're just, I don't know, maybe tucked away in the wilderness of Wyoming or, I don't know, somewhere like that, Idaho, maybe parts of Montana. But even Montana, I mean, Bozeman's being taken over by leftists. The point is that this is practical for when it is just all coming to a head in your community, and it is coming to a head in Minneapolis. So we want to restore order. We want to have a method of some strategies on how to do this, how to fight the stupidity that's happening at our local town councils or city councils, or in whoever county commissioners. There's a big fight here where I'm from. There's a Google data center that's going in not too far from here that has people very upset. A lot of accusations. It's changed the landscape. There's just everything, right? There's politics is all over the place. And there's different types of politics. What we're dealing in Minnesota is the most dangerous type. And I want to talk about this. I want to give hope to the people who are there. And I think, listen, I'm not the community organizer like President Obama was, but there are some things that we can learn and implement just through a lot of lessons, a lot of different places we can learn some of these lessons. And I want to talk about that today because I think it's important. Because defeating your morale, causing the people who love their country to give up hope and to throw their hands up in the air and say, what do you do? And I'm not saying that's how, there's different ways people can say that comment, by the way, right? My brother-in-law said, but what do we do about it? That's what he asked me. So, but there's legitimately asking the question, which is how I interpreted his comment. What do we do about it? Okay, this is a serious problem. I can chuckle at that, but this is a major deal. What can we do about it? There's other people who say, what do you do about it? And just go about their business with their head in the sand as they basically watch their state, city, country being walked into the great abyss. And that's not going to be me. I know that's not the vast majority of you either, my friends. So we're going to talk about that today. Before we get started, let's be honest, my friends. We've all seen those families who seem to have a plan that lasts for generations. That is not by accident. Full Suite Wealth works with people who want their wealth to make a difference for years to come. Their team brings together high-level investment strategies like private equity, private credit, option strategies, all of those things coupled with expert legal guidance. It's about making sure your vision becomes a reality for the people you love today and tomorrow. If you're looking to do more than just manage money, if you want to leave your mark, build something lasting, take a look at Full Suite Wealth. FullSuiteWealth.com is the website. That's FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future, my friends. Okay, so let's talk here. Let's do a little rundown, if you will. We've got lawlessness. Lawlessness is a breakdown of ultimately morality. Lawlessness is a breakdown for the respect of lawful authority. Lawlessness is, it creates problems, a breakdown in the community, or it's a symptom of a breakdown in a community. Dare I say, at its core, lawlessness is a spiritual problem. And they're out there, they, the left, are calling for absolute lawlessness. And they are on the side of lawlessness. And they want you to think, they want the people who are on their side to think that they're on the right side of the issue. In fact, in the last two Todd Talks, I think yesterday, Oz, I did a Todd Talk on another deranged nurse. The last two Todd Talks, I shared a story of deranged nurses in healthcare that are recommending people do some terrible things, and they think they're on the right side of this. In fact, one of these deranged nurses came out in a subsequent video she posted on social media and said that she's on the right side of this after she was calling for Caroline Leavitt to have permanent injuries suffered during childbirth. I mean, if that doesn't say she's on the right side of an issue, I don't know what does. These people are calling for the harm of individuals. The other deranged nurse was calling for the harm of an individual, of ICE agents, I should say. Here's how you make ICE agents sick. Here's how you can get them. Here's how you can make their life miserable. She used the phrase, stay toxic. This is who they are. And yet they think they're on a moral pedestal, which, by the way, anytime you look at yourself and think, my, oh my, I am a fantastic person standing on a moral pedestal, you best change your mentality immediately. Pride comes before the downfall, my friends. I think both of these nurses have been fired. Good. Their licenses need to be permanently revoked, but that's not what I want to get into specifically. I'm saying these are symptoms of a larger problem. They're calling, literally, this is absolute lawlessness. You're telling people how to do things to harm people proactively because you politically disagree with them. That is a spiritual issue. Chaos thrives then because what happens is the good people tend to isolate. The good people tend to say, we're not going to go around that, which I get. You leave the place where you see the chaos, you move your family out, you have to protect them. 100% understand that. But they isolate. You create an echo chamber in these radical places where the only people that are left are the insane, deranged, morally bankrupt people. You have people who are not afraid, who have lost their courage. They are absent. They are silent. Churches in the area avoid talking about the truth, or they just talk about things in a watered down way so that they don't upset the community and get protested, get stormed. Civic engagement is weak. People withdraw. But the thing is, this is all fixable. Now, it is one heck of a massive problem that we have to fix, but it is still fixable. At least we have a chance to fix it. I don't know how this story ends. I don't, but I know these things. Number one, the first thing, if you find yourself in this situation, I think the first thing that needs to happen is it happens in our minds. First of all, we have to accept the reality of the circumstances. We have to commit to not being like the people who are causing the problems. We have to decide to act courageously. We have to decide to act within the confines of the law. And we have to decide to, especially I would say, even if you don't have a relationship with God, that's the starting point for a lot of these things. My friends, the human heart is depraved. And if we want to change the heart, the one way to change that I'm aware of is for the God of the universe to be allowed in. And he's offered that to all of us. Allow him into our lives to sanctify us, to make us more like him. And so we have to, there's a component of this, right? I mean, the people, myself included, pray for revival in this nation. Revival starts when you look in the mirror, my friends. That person staring back at you, that's the person that you can change. What Gandhi said, everyone thinks of changing the world. No one thinks of changing himself. And again, as a Christian, I can't really change myself, but I can make choices to allow the one that can make me more like him to have the reins, so to speak. So what we need to do is have a mental shift, a deep breath. This is reality. This is what we've got going on. I know that there is a risk here. I know there is a cost here. The only way to do this is to pull like-minded people together and take one step at a time. One step at a time. Or if you want another analogy, lay one brick at a time. You know, the story in the Bible, there's a story in a book of Nehemiah where the people are allowed to return to Jerusalem. You might know from biblical history that the Babylonians came in and put the people in exile. They came in and destroyed the city of Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, destroyed the walls, just made Jerusalem into a mound of rubble. and they took some of the more promising people, the as far as skills are concerned, or influence or leadership opportunities, and they exiled them. They took them back to Babylon, and over time, some were granted favor to go back and to rebuild that city. And you can read that story in the book of Nehemiah. And you rebuild the walls brick by brick. In fact, you'll read it in there that each person was responsible for basically guarding the where the wall used to be as they were rebuilding it, guarding that section of the wall that was adjacent to their homes. And so that's how they protected their families and the people of the city until they rebuilt that wall. This is going to be a tedious process. But what is the option? Absolute lawlessness, absolute moral depravity, which we've seen on full display. So we have to have the right mindset. This is going to be uncomfortable. The personal cost is real. You can expect social pressure just off the charts. There will be strain. There will be pushback. There will be relationships damaged. By the way, I'm not one that ever would seek to allow politics to interfere with or to damage a relationship. I'm friends with people who are certainly Democrats. I'm friends with people who they don't have to agree with me. Heck, you don't have. There's times I change my mind and disagree with myself. Not very often because I'm usually right. I'm kidding, just kind of. But I there are times I disagree with myself, and it'd be wild to think that anybody should agree with me all the time. Politics doesn't define who my friends are, but at some point, my friends, if you're standing on the side of moral depravity and absolute lawlessness, how can I expect to be a friend with you? You can have different ideas and want different things and think different things about immigration law, but as much as it's up to me, Bible says this as well, as much as it is up to you, live at peace with all people. I try to do that, but listen, there's going to be consequences for this, and we've got to be prepared. It reminds me of the founders. I've shared this with you before. You know this if you know your history. When those 56 signers signed the Declaration of Independence, they pinned their names right after these words. It says this: "We mutually pledge to one another our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." And they meant it. A lot of them suffered tremendous loss from the American Revolution. Imprisonment was at stake here, right? When they signed that document, they were either signing a document that could put them in prison or even to death. So a lot of these founders were suffered imprisonment or personal threats, destruction of property. Some died. Lost family members. And the commitment has to be made before the outcome. There's a word that's banned by some, and I have this mentality, and I don't like when people say that they're going to try. I'm going to try to do something. Listen, I'm not saying this from some like manifestation sort of thing. I'm saying this from a mindset sort of position. Yoda said it best: do or do not, there is no try. Now listen, I also understand that we can seek to do something and we can fail. But the mind has to be set on the objective, and we have to commit to the objective. We can't just have a tire-kicking mentality. Let's give this a try. Let's see if this works. We have to be committed. There has to be a commitment, and this commitment has to run deep. In fact, I think it's a lot deeper than the average person understands. I will tell you this, without getting into the gory details of what it means to be an entrepreneur, to do something like what I'm doing here with the show, starting from the closet. I'm telling you, my understanding of commitment and difficulty is infinitely different than it was on August 15th of 2000, or August 10th, 2015, whenever we launched the show, right? But I was committed, and so my realization of what that meant changed as I walked through some of these fires. But the commitment was necessary, and we have to do that. So how does that translate to Minneapolis? we have to first and foremost seek law and order. We have to commit to no violence. We have to commit to being courageous and, dare I say, visible. We have to be willing to be unliked, disliked. We have to understand that is part of the cost, my friends, unfortunately, and it's going to happen. Now, we require community. God created humans to need or require community. And community helps us to have more confidence. It helps us to see that we're not the only ones out there. And it helps us to, there's strength in numbers. Chaos can exploit isolation. That's one of the reasons why these leftist lunatics behave the way they do. They appear to be larger in number because they're louder and more obnoxious and so forth. But there's actually a lot of people who agree with what I think, what you think about this. The Navy SEALs have a buddy system, right? You have your swim buddy. That helps with accountability. That helps with encouragement. That helps from a perspective of safety. It builds trust. It helps them perform better under stress. We need that. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I remember when I worked on the horse farm all these years ago, I hired someone to help me in the summer, a friend of mine. And I remember the owner of the property, Dr. Bennett, making a comment one day that the work that we had done, the whole amount of work was greater than the sum of its parts. He had witnessed that full hand. There's something magical that comes from community. That has to be built. That can be done online. That can be done in person. It can be some, combination of the two, but it has to be done. It's done. It's a critical part. And there's probably groups that are already in existence. You don't necessarily have to start one. You can join one. But that's an important first step here. I'm getting to the end of the first segment. Friends, if you need branded merchandise, if you need promotional products, trade show materials, giveaway products, premium items, company polos, hats, why don't you try Red, White, and Brand? redwhiteandbrand.com. Owned and operated here by the Todd Huff Show. redwhiteandbrand.com. Promo code Todd will save you 10% on your first order. Red, White, and Brand, your logo, my friends, on almost anything. I've got to take a quick time out. Back here, my friends, in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Just trying to give some practical advice, some framing of how to combat this nonsense. What the left is banking on, the lunatics, the lawlessness, the chaotic lunatics out there, the rebel rousers, they are counting on demoralizing you. They're counting on shouting you out. They're counting on intimidating you. You can't let that happen. You can't let we all have our strengths and weaknesses. They better have had their Wheaties if they think they're going to intimidate you and people like me in this audience here. But this is a real strat. This is their strategy, their objective, how they think about it. It's why they storm churches, block parents from getting to their children. Listen, Oz and I were talking about what might happen if that was tried with us, with our church. I can't even imagine. Who do these people think they are, and how do people just go along with this stuff? I don't understand it. Weakness is an epidemic here, and we have to be moral, I guess, and just in the way we do it. But there's nothing wrong with being strong, my friends. You don't have to have a majority either. You know that historically, when this country, I've talked about this on the program before, but when this country was founded, historically, going through the American Revolution, about one third of the people were prepared to fight for their independence. 1/3 of them approximately were loyalists, and 1/3 of them just wanted to be left alone. And yet here we are, nearly 250 years later. We will be here in a few short months, celebrating our 250th birthday. Not sure we would have made it with a second Biden term or with a Kamala Harris term, but nonetheless, friends, we are here because 1/3 of the people stood up and fought for something. Small, committed groups can absolutely accomplish great things. So, this is again, to me, the reality of the circumstances. We have to build groups, coalitions in these communities. This will raise morale. This will signal unity. This will encourage other people to join the group. This will help people to, again, we're not looking for everybody. Some people are going to say, leave me alone no matter what. Some people are going to be in cahoots with the lawlessness. They like probably the kickbacks they're getting. They like the freebies, whatever else they've got. They're on board with all those things. So we're not. And the good news is most people are not. This is different even from the American Revolution. I would go as far to say that these folks can be easily, the cause for this fight, or I should say that the people who are in favor of the opposition, the people who are on the side of, the lawlessness, that's harder to be on that side. At least in the American Revolution, people could, Britain wasn't out there just calling for complete pandemonium. They certainly were tyrannical towards the people that they were supposed to be governing. They weren't treating them very well, treating the colonists very well. But nonetheless, there's less to be in favor of on the opponent's side today than there was even in 1776. So we have to get together. People in Minneapolis, people in Minnesota need to come together. They also have to understand that the opposition has amplified number. They're paid people. It's been organized by some big money. It's been amplified by the media. We've talked about this even recently on this program. And we have to have basically a lawful civic type of counterinsurgency. There needs to be organization. There needs to be persistence. There needs to be discipline on the narrative. The narrative just needs to be we're restoring law and order, right? We can disagree on some of these other things politically, but we have to stay unified over the message that we're going to be a state, a city, a nation of law and order. You have to be on that side of the issue. You have to be disciplined with your narrative. You have to be present in the community. That can take any number of, shapes. People have to see. They have to see that there are people that are standing up on the side of reason and logic and truth and goodness and law and order, and that will encourage more to come out. It may not encourage them to join the group, but there will be at some point, there can be a turning of the tide. There can be a turning of the tide where people are more willing to speak out against this stuff. By the way, if you're a business owner and you have people who are destroying your city working for your company, fire them. I understand the risks of all this. I understand potential lawsuits, but again, we have to have the mentality that says we mutually pledge to one another our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. If you're going to try to destroy our city, this isn't about politics. You've let them work for you in the past when they've had different political opinions. They are destroying your city. This enough is enough. This has to be stopped. You've seen, I referenced these two lunatic nurses, and there's a lot more who are out there cheering for people's harm, telling people how to harm ICE agents, whatever else is out there. These people not only need to lose their job, they need to permanently lose their qualifications. We have to understand that this fight has many fronts. You hear me talk about the 7 pillars of propaganda? That's not just to fill time here on this program, my friends. That's to give you a visual, something to put your hands around to say that this fight is happening in a lot of places. It's happening, yes, in our government. We have to win elections, no doubt. But it's also happening in woke business. It's happening with the media. It's happening with big tech. It's happening in entertainment. It's happening in academia. This is what we have to get our hands around and understand. We have to fight this battle on multiple fronts. And that's why these things matter. And also, you know what happens when you bring a group of people together that are pushing in the same direction? You will find that there are people who fit different parts of the puzzle. You will find that there are some social media savvy people. You'll probably find a good videographer. You'll probably find someone that knows how to help with messaging. You'll find someone who knows how to maybe give speeches on a stage. You'll find someone who knows how to go out and to recruit new members or support. You'll find people in the group maybe who can run for political office, which is the next phase of this, right? Once the first step is to stop the lawlessness and to return to law and order. Lawlessness is anti-order. It is not compassionate. It is not justice. It is not some sort of a noble reform. It dismantles the structure. It harms people. The rule of law matters. America is governed by law. That's really where our commitment should lie as Americans. The commitment to respect the rule of law. We're not committed to some monarch and king that we just, hang on his every whim and wish and dictate and so forth. We should follow and respect the rule of law. America is governed by law. Legal process is the framework. Respect for law creates that stability. We should, here's another part of this. We should, in our churches, we should demand that the church start being the church. Some are doing fine. This is not a uniform condemnation against the church and Big C church. But there are absolutely churches that are way out of bounds. These gender-affirming, the trans-affirming churches, those who openly accept the LGBT agenda, those who preach about the biblical, support of abortion and crazy stuff like that. The churches who are out there talking only about the love of Jesus and not about repentance and not about opposing this chaotic stuff. God is a God of law and order, my friends. Lawful authority is to be respected biblically. Yes, Jesus is love, but love doesn't mean that we condone sin. The whole message of the gospel is that Jesus died for our sin. We're to repent and to turn from it and to agree with his ways, not to say we love Jesus, Jesus loves us, but we're still going to do things our way. That is not the message of the gospel, my friends. Got to take a break here. If you're curious about Kratom or just trying to figure out who to trust, let me introduce you to Kratom, Christopher's Organic Botanicals, family-run company. They offer natural, lab-tested Kratom, not the synthetic stuff that's given Kratom a bad name, that's in those horror stories that's caused harm to people. Christopher's is about responsibly sourcing it, testing it for purity. They work directly with farmers in Indonesia. They follow the same traditions that have been used for generations. There's no gimmicks. There's no shortcuts, just clean, honest alternatives for people looking for a more natural way to support their health, turning away from some of those prescriptions that run with a warning label that's a mile long. You can start with their Kratom Starter Pack. It's a great way to start. Use coupon code Todd Huff to save 10%. Visit Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency, and yes, time out for me, my friends. Back in just a minute. Yes, my friends. Some of these churches out there absolutely need church reform. And you know what? Even if the churches, many churches, they may not need doctrinal reform, there are still certainly individual Christians who play church. The time for this sort of thing, there's never been a time for this. But if there's ever been an opportunity to change and to take this stuff more seriously, this is it. Clear moral teaching needs to be within the walls of the church. There needs to be discipline and not ambiguity. Yes, of course, there needs to be grace and love. Absolutely 100%. But to embrace lawlessness and to cheer for the things that the left is cheering for, which is utter depravity, my friends. That cannot be tolerated. It simply cannot be. So that's all that stuff needs to happen now. But this is a long-term battle that we're in ourselves, that we find ourselves in, a long war. And I want to talk about that as well. This is not changing overnight. This is not changing, dare I say, my friend, definitely not before the midterms. Maybe it can be impacted positively before the midterms. Maybe it can, midterms. Why did I say interns? The midterms. It can be impacted positively between now and the midterms. But this battle that we find ourselves in, we're in it for the rest of our lives. Get ready. We've signed. This is what it means, my friends, to live in a fallen world. This side of heaven, we're in a fallen world. The enemy doesn't sleep. They're not going to sleep. This world is all that they have. Government is God. They want the power and the authority, and they will do anything, mark my words, anything to achieve it. We have to understand what we're up against, and we have to understand that this battle is never, hear me say never, going away, my friends. So I want to conclude with thoughts on that in a moment. But friends, let's face it, there's a lot of companies out there that do not share your Christian values. The good news is you don't have to invest in them. This isn't about having some litmus test, but there's something very troubling about a company that you invest in that's funding the stuff that your faith and your values make it impossible for you to support. And so 4-8 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. They'll help you screen out companies that go against your faith, your values, and they'll help you create a plan that's tailored to your goals. They do the heavy lifting so you can focus on what really matters. If you want to see how, to what degree your current investments align with your values, head on over to 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. Complete the quick and easy assessment there, and they will show you to what degree your investments align with your beliefs and your values. My friends, 4-8 Financial, because your values matter, and so does your money. All right, so we're in a long-term battle here, long-term war. You've heard me use the phrase cold civil war. I've talked about that on this program for years. This, what we're seeing in Minneapolis, though, is a turning from the cold part of the war to a hot war where there's actually violence and there has been death and there has been encouragement of, lawlessness, as we've talked about, and physical altercation, physical obstruction of law enforcement, federal law enforcement. Folks, politics is no longer optional. Expect this to be an ongoing campaign that is going to last for the rest of your life. Just embrace it. That's the only option. The only option is that you let these lunatics run the show and destroy this country and burn it to the ground. We have to expect that we're not going to win at every step of the way. There's going to be temporary losses and setbacks, elections here and there, but we've got to put our head down and continue to do the work necessary to turn this country around and head in the right direction. We have to identify some community leaders. We have to encourage some of those folks to run for office. I'd like to tell you that you can do this through your local Republican Party. I don't know if that's true or not. It probably matters case by case. But we have to accept that there's going to be some boring stuff in there or some stuff that pushes us outside of our comfort zone. Fundraising for candidates, door knocking, phone calls, working the polls. And it matters at all levels: local councils, county officials, state reps, school boards, prosecutors, judges, congressmen, senators, governors, you name it. It's not about national personalities. We have to focus on law and order. Most people want that. Most families want that. Only lunatics don't, my friends. We have to focus on winning votes. You know, I try on this program to win the argument so that we're persuading people over time. This campaign here would be about winning votes. It's about winning the next election. You got to have a strategy for both. I'm not in the business of campaigning and elections. I'm in the business of trying to educate and persuade. And those take longer. We have to win votes, and it's going to take boots on the ground there in these places doing the work necessary to do that. Friends, chaos is hurting communities. We have to stay on that message. Accountability after the wins. Let's assume that we win some of these races. Minnesota regains some control. You have to hold these people accountable too. The point is that we're in a long-term fight. And my friends, we shouldn't give up. We should be very hopeful, but the stakes are high. I got to go. SDG.